You're listening to Live Wild Radio, the part-time adventure podcast.
Join us as we explore how outdoor adventures build mind, body, and spirit.
Before we get to the show today, we've got our first real partner sponsor, Great Lakes Girya. So Girya is the Russian word for kettlebell. They have kettlebells in stock, which I know is a big issue in a lot of places. Really high quality bells, the Russian hardstyle, that range from as little as 4 kilos up to 96 kilos. Really love the quality. Handles are great. The part that's great is we got you a 5% discount. So if you go to greatlakesgirya.com, if you're here in Canada or in the United States, it's us.greatlakesgirya.com. And use the promo code LiveWild at checkout. You'll get 5% off. And in addition to kettlebells, they have barbells. They have squat racks. They have dumbbells, maces, weighted clubs, chin-up bars, whole collection of gear. So don't forget, if you want to get in shape, don't count on the gyms. They keep having to close. So set your gym up at home now and save some money on it. Welcome, everybody. Anybody that goes to our website might have seen the article I put up on how to start rock climbing. Usually when we put up articles, we'll also do podcasts about it. So today we've got a special guest, Joe Castillo from Climb Life. He's a climber, runs a business, is an author, although his book isn't out yet. But it's perfectly right up our alley because it's about starting climbing too. So welcome, Joe. Tell everybody where you are right now.
Hey guys, nice to meet you. I'm in Zion in Utah. This is probably my most favorite park. I've been coming here since I was 8 years old as a little kid. And I've been here usually 2 to 3 times a year. So,
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you want to hate Joe now, you can.
Yeah.
For anybody that's in lockdown and all that kind of stuff. So if people aren't familiar, Zion is a national park in Utah that boasts some of the most beautiful red sandstone walls. Obviously probably the most famous climb in there is Moonlight Buttress, but there's hundreds and hundreds of climbs in there. Like Moonlight Buttress is 1,200 feet high.
What's level? 5'10"?
No, it's like a 12B.
12, yeah.
Yeah. So hard, not world-class hard, but still pretty freaking hard. But yeah. Great protection because it's a crack that you climb. So you might need a dozen of the same size pieces because it's a uniform crack. But whatever.
Is that where you had your swing?
No, but it was down in that area. It was Indian Creek.
Okay. And what's your favorite protection for that? It was a cam. Anyway, he thought he was gonna die.
Yeah, well, it's basically Utah's home of my biggest fall. It's like,
how big?
It was a 50-footer.
Whoa!
Well, because it was the thing where all my small wires on like a traverse blew out, so I took like this, like one of those ones. Because as a climber, we all run into the thing at some point. You fall long enough that you go, shouldn't I have stopped already? And then it's like, oh, God bless Camelot number 3, Big Blue, saved my ass because all the little wires I put in all just ripped out because,
it was just psychological.
Yeah. So when I finally went up the next time, I just didn't bother because I was so pumped when I finally like traversed to the next crack that I couldn't. And it was just a beautiful hand crack. So once you're in it, you're fine. But I couldn't make the transition because I was too tired. Because popping and fiddling little nuts in kind of tires you out. So basically,
the climb.
Yeah.
Oh, you went right back up.
Well, I sort of went, caught my breath, kind of thing. But it was a multi-pitch climb, so it was like either keep going or bail, and I don't like leaving gear behind. So, yeah, I'm a booty collector, not a booty leaver, if I can avoid it.
That's what I like to hear.
Yeah. So Joe, the theme of this episode obviously is how people can get into climbing. So before we get into the nitty gritty of that, how did you get into climbing?
I was really bored. I was 14 years old. And I just went to a climbing gym just for fun. I was like, oh, I just want to try something new. I'm from Southern California, so there's not a lot of good climbing in like Huntington Beach area. So I just kind of started off at the gym, and I got really lucky. I had an uncle. His name's Reinhard Stenzel. He was climbing for about 15 years. He took like 4 years off before I started climbing. But he took me to my first trip to Joshua Tree.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I got really lucky because he already had all the gear, he had all the stuff, and he kind of like grandfathered me in. So he kind of really taught me the ropes of how to like place gear, how to build anchors. So I didn't have to do any of the hard work of like, where do I go? He just kind of showed me how to do it. And as I progressed into climbing, I turned like 15. I started going more into the competition scene, just like bouldering really hard. And I did pretty good. I made it to nationals one year when I was 17. But then I got caught with an injury, a finger injury, and it took me out for about 6 months. So I took some time off and just started only bouldering outside, and then switched to the kind of more sports. And now I'm going back into trad climbing. And I think one of the coolest part about rock climbing is you have so many different like forms of climbing. You could do hardcore bouldering, you could do very easy trad climbing where you climb for like 2 days straight, all easy moves. So it doesn't really matter how like physical fit you are in climbing. It just, you need to find a climbing like type that's your style. So yeah.
So you climbed in what parts of the US or elsewhere? Where have you climbed?
I've climbed in Canada, Vietnam, Russia, Australia, a little bit in Puerto Rico, all throughout like Southern California, Yosemite. That's not Southern California, but Tahoe. I'm really like a adventure seeker. Like I love to travel and climb.
Nice.
More than try to get on the classics, maybe a hard thing. But yeah, I would say my home crag is definitely Joshua Tree. So I know that place like the back of my hand.
Nice. And is this what you do full time now? Between life and yeah.
Yep. Due to COVID, I was working part-time. So I was trying to do my business, and then I was doing trade shows as a side as like a rigger. But due to COVID, I'm going all in on climb life, which I kind of take as a blessing. So even though I lost my job due to COVID, it really gave me more of a center mind of how to like help out other climbers get into climbing. So I'm really grateful for that. So
yeah, and that's sort of the tough thing I think for a lot of people, because the last year, it seems to be people have either like gotten in super shape or they've gone down like a dark spiral. You know what I mean? Like it's been one of those things where when things are forced upon you, sometimes it's that kick in the ass you need to sort of like go all in on your business, or the whole world falls apart. And it's such a weird thing, because I always say that, like, because this is technically a recession, right?
Yeah.
Like this is the most uneven recession of my lifetime, right? 2008, we all got kicked in the pants. Whereas this one, like, you're doing better now than you did a year ago.
Yeah.
Because, there's a bunch of savings, but she's still working. I'm doing better. But then there's people, like whole businesses and sectors that are just wiped out. Like if you own a restaurant or a bar, you're like, it's not that you've taken a kick in the pants. It's like, it's almost like the world is actively out to destroy you.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then even just to get into new hobbies, right? Especially climbing, even outside of COVID, it's finding a good mentor. If you want to go outdoors, that's hard. So I like that's what you offer is, for people who want to go to new places, you can get people who are experienced, make some contacts. But how does somebody who's new at it, whether it be through Climb Life, or what tips do you have for them to get into it?
The tips I would have is start light. you know, really try to figure out like where the good climbing spots are near your house. So kind of like Google, look around, like, okay, I have a climbing spot within 30 minutes. So the first thing I would do is kind of like go out there, check it out yourself, just do hiking, get the hang of it, see what people are doing. And then the second thing I would do is probably definitely, I mean, gyms are kind of closed right now, but gyms are a really good way of kind of entering. But the problems which I notice with gyms is you kind of get stuck in the gym mentality. So a really good way I would say is actually like hiring a guide, whether Climb Life or AMGA guide, whoever you want. These guides, they've been climbing for like 10 to 15 years. So they have all the knowledge and they have friendships and they can like introduce you to more people and they'll push you into climbing to try different things. Because if you start at the gym, I know it's like a lot of beginners just only go into bouldering they get caught in that spiral of they only boulder for like 5 years straight. But there's so much more forms of climbing. So that's something like I notice a lot of guides will teach you how to get into trad and stuff like that. And then the second thing I would say is like wait on buying your shoes and harnesses because that kind of costs a lot of money. So if you go with the guide, they're going to tell you what is a good harness, what's a good shoes. And yeah, just kind of start with the basics, kind of like a tool a week or a tool every 2 weeks. That's something like you kind of do in construction where you, instead of spending all your money and paying like $2,000 for all this gear, just pay $50 for a harness, pay $50 for used shoes. Like don't buy new stuff except for harnesses. Buy new harnesses, but the shoes, go with something used so you can like save some money, see if you really like it. Because one of the most frequently asked questions I get is like, hey, I go to a guide, I like what I learned, I bought my shoes, I bought my harnesses, I want to start going on my own. And they're like, I'm thinking about using Facebook. And it's like, yeah, Facebook is a really good way of finding partners. The one thing is, though, if you're very beginning, you need to know like the 5 basics thing of like how to check your gear, how the anchors are, like route finding, make sure you know what your climbing grade is. And until you really learn that, you shouldn't be going with other people. Oh, and belaying and communication. Because like if you've only climbed 2 times and you go off climbing with someone off Facebook and you're like, oh, I'm very good, and then you start belaying them, you're actually putting the experienced climber in like a dangerous spot.
Yeah.
And vice versa. So I would really say like really learn from a mentor and really think of it as like a tool that you can use in your life. Because the mentor, I've seen, it took me like 3 years to get like on a bigger wall. But I've seen climbers with 8 months or 6 months climbing some pretty big walls without a guide. And they were able to do that because they had the right mentors to get them into climbing. So,
Wow.
and yeah, and then also learn the tools. So you need to know Mountain Project, you need to know Facebook groups, you need to know, all these different tools. And I think we're very lucky nowadays that we have so much like tools, devices, new gear that like in a week I could climb some of the best things with like a click of a button just by connecting with people. So I'm very excited what's going to be happening like with climbing. And I hope in the climbing future that we start like expanding instead of everyone going to like one crag, let's go to like 40 different crags, because like, oh,
Yeah.
go on. What were you going to say?
I just said spread it out a little bit.
Spread it out. Exactly. Because everyone knows one crag, but someone else might know like 8 more crags. Because I've been to Joshua Tree and you might see like 6 places where people climb, but there's thousands of routes, they're just empty daily. So
How often do you go by other groups of people climbing and you see like inexperience? They shouldn't be here. They're making mistakes. They're putting others at risk. How often does that happen percentage wise?
I would say daily. I would say I couldn't even give, but if you go to a crag, you'll probably see at least 1 out of 5 climbers making mistakes. But it also depends where you're at too. Like when I went out to Squamish, I saw a lot of people who really knew how to climb.
Mhm.
When I'm in Southern California, we just don't have like a great like climbing community. Like we have a lot of really good climbers, but it's not like honed in like Squamish where everyone climbs, and Colorado. So different areas have different levels. Like Utah, I feel like the climbers are way more experienced. So
Yeah, because that's sort of one of the biggest things that I try to get across to new climbers is that you're not going to be ready to climb on your own unless you've like done really comprehensive and relatively expensive like courses with guides, where you're working, all of those basic skills from anchor building to belaying to sport climbing and clipping and self-rescue, and there's all of these different skills you need to safely be able to climb or be the leader.
Yep.
So I try to convey to people that it's not a weekend kind of thing and boom, you're ready for anything. I've been doing it now, like this summer will be 36 years and I'm still learning stuff. Right. Obviously, I'm able to climb on my own, but so it's not going to take me that long. But that idea that, you know, making those climbing friends, so that you're not the one having to be responsible for everything for a while, and you can learn from them, because it takes a while to get to the point where you're ready for the responsibility of everybody else's safety.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that 100%.
Explain what Climb Life is.
Climb Life is an app and website. Right now we're pushing people onto the website because we're doing some new builds. But essentially kind of like the idea is kind of like Uber for climbing guides in a weird sense. So meaning if you're like a climbing guide, you can go on there and you have a profile. And then we just added in a new feature called Insta Climb, where if you're a new user, you just hit like Insta Climb, and then you say, I want to go climbing this date at this time. Put in all the details, you put like I'm a beginner, this, etc. Then that shoots out an email and text message to every guide in the location within 100 miles. Then the guide will be able to reply back to the climber with the price. So then and then the climber can choose which guide they want to climb with. And we have a review system, we have rating, we double check every guide. So yeah, we make sure that they're good. So
they all have their certification. They're all like, they work for.
So we do it like two different ways. One, we do our own like validation, like we do our own checkup, make sure that they're good. And then we also have a thing where if you're like AMGA, you can actually hit upload, and then on the climber's profile, it'll say AMGA certified. So that's how you can kind of tell, or like the other guide certification, but AMGA is kind of like the big one in America. So that's one way how you can tell, and it varies in different situations too. So
yeah. So aside from obviously finding a mentor, and starting in a gym, what are some other things you would suggest for people if they want to learn more about climbing, like becoming, expand their knowledge base?
Oh, YouTube's super good. I would say you want to learn your knots good. I mean, learn at least the figure eight, the overhand knot, how to tie two ropes together. Look up rappelling, know how to do a stopper knot. But I would definitely say like YouTube helps a lot. Follow the great people in climbing. So whoever's really good is going to really help you out. Like you choose, like with Instagram, I mainly use Instagram or YouTube, but I'll follow Adam Andra because he's the best climber like in technical stuff. And then I watch like Alex Honnold because he gets me stoked if I want to do some soloing. You shouldn't solo for at least 5 years or 10 years. But yeah, I would just say like follow certain people and see who's helping out people, be like, YouTube it, look up these knots, because there's like 10 different knots you can use for climbing, or like hundreds of different knots you can use for climbing, but you really only need to figure out like one way to do it and master that. And then once you master your knot, choose another knot and master that. Because I've gone up climbs with just like 2 knots before.
Got
Like, you know, so.
Yeah, because fundamentally, obviously, if you can tie in, excuse me, obviously clove hitch is useful on multi-pitch because that's what I'll tether myself with. And then most everything else is like, an overhand or figure 8 when you're making anchors.
Yeah. And I think I'm hesitant to go by myself, or I mean, not like being responsible with somebody else. Yeah. Well, I had a fear of heights, by the way. I've gotten over it, but so maybe that just helps get subtle context. But there's something to be said, like when you're in the desert, even if it's in the shoulder season, is the heat, right? So being able to master a knot, even when you're tired, and you're not necessarily thinking clearly, I think is really important. I think people underestimate the conditions, especially if they're not from the area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you on that one.
So obviously you mentioned like finding partners. So any tips for like a new-ish climber on how you judge if the person you're prospectively partnering up with knows what they're doing? Like if you're fairly new, you don't know enough to do it on your own.
Yeah, I would say really look at their photos, really. So you can go on Facebook or Instagram and you can do a pretty thorough background. If you see them like 500 feet up in like multiple photos, not like just one photo or like 5 photos of the same rock that they posted, for 6 months straight. The people joking. But really look to see, and you can kind of tell, like if this person's at Yosemite, if this person's at Red Rocks, Squamish, you can kind of get a really good feeling. So just kind of do a quick background check, and then they don't have to be up like big walls. Like some people just like to boulder, and you can just look at like bouldering pics and look at crash pads, and then like even if anyone wants to message me, like my Instagram's OG Climb Life. And also on my website, when you sign up, we actually talk to you like individually, one-on-one, just so you have any questions to ask us. So like if you're nervous, you can even use us to be like, hey, do you think this partner is good? And then I could look at their profile. I could even give them a phone call or something and just ask them a couple basic questions. So yeah.
Yeah, that'd be super helpful for people because that's you and I can look at, or talk to somebody and know if they know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
But when you get somebody new, it's one of those things, they don't have enough knowledge to be able to know if the person that they might go out with is safe. Like I not just me, but like a bunch of my friends, we kind of jokingly call the person who's like gonna go climb, and some of my friends are like this, with like randos, kind of belay sluts. It's like I'll climb with anybody, you know what I mean? But it's always kind of rolling the dice a little bit, because a gree can't fix everything.
No. Until they make the self belay, we still have to use humans.
Yeah. So you talked about you'd like to go on adventures when you travel. Talk a bit about that.
I just love traveling. Like I love trying new food. Like one of my major goals was to climb Vietnam, Halong Bay. There's a really famous free soloist like Matt Bush, and he does a really cool speech where he said like he got past his to make him like free solo well. He climbed at Halong Bay. So let me just give you a little background on Halong Bay. It's these giant like little islands that are like 50 feet up, and it's all rock, all like vertical or overhanging. And it's some of the best limestone like I've ever climbed on. And you start climbing on it, and when you fall down, you land in water. and these islands are just like everywhere. Like they're just like you you're in this like little canoe thing, and you like go maybe like 100, 300 yards, and you're at a new island. And the climbing's just like spectacular. Like and I got really lucky on that trip because I went there very dumb. Like I normally I'm 150, and I cut weight till about 137. And the first day I was there, I ate a bunch of oysters, and I got a very bad case of food poisoning, and I dropped down to 124 in 2 days.
Oh wow.
So yeah, when I started climbing, I was flashing 513s because within 2 days I lost all that weight. And then the third day I had a lot of stoke, so I was going to climb. And since I didn't like anything, I think I did about 6 513s like on site. I was stoked. I was like flashing 12s, and I was like, woo. So yeah, like traveling is just such a cool way of just like opening up the mind and seeing new possibilities. Like when I climbed in Russia, I got to climb at this place where it's like all marble, and it was like the weirdest, slickest climbs ever. And it was fantastic.
Yeah. Where else? What's on your bucket list? Where else do you want to go?
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot. Trying to think.
Does Brazil have any good climbing?
Brazil has a lot.
Yeah, like in
I've been
Rio, because my family in Rio, they have those big boulders.
really.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It looks very yeah.
Well, and then when you get, obviously they're not very accessible, but there's the tepuis, which are the quartzite like cloud islands, right? It's what the Lost World is based on. But what you end up with is these. Alex Honnold was just down there, like with National Geographic, but basically it's these like vertical rock towers that have an entirely different ecosystem on top of them because they've been separated from the bottom of the jungle for 40 million years. And the only because obviously everything down there is like so lush and green, it's only overhanging rock that you can really climb, because anything vertical will end up with plants all over it. Really kind of fascinating. Basically sort of these different areas. Now it's brutal to get to because you gotta.
This is in Brazil?
Right at the corner of Venezuela, Brazil, and Guyana. Because there's one of these tepuis that actually marks the cross borders of all three of them.
Okay.
And that's sort of where they were.
That's
for
cool.
this. But these are all, like, there's a whole chunk of them in the jungle there. Yeah.
So is this on your bucket list?
Nah, I hate the jungle. I hate bugs.
And he doesn't like sweating.
Like, and I sweat my ass off anyway. So, like, my favorite place on earth is the U.S. Southwest, right?
Really?
Right? Because whether it's, obviously anything in southern Utah is amazing, like from Indian Creek over to Zion. Like, I was talking, we did a backpacking trip down there a few years ago, and talking to somebody at like an outdoor store in, like, they only have one store, but in Escalante, just a tiny little town there. And I was saying, like, has anybody developed any climbing on 50 Mile Ridge? Because it's like a 1,500 foot high, 50 mile long cliff.
Whoa.
Right. And he's like, nah, it's too much of a pain to go back, because there's a 5 mile crossing the desert, like from the main road to get to it.
Okay.
And it's like, no, we got so much other stuff, we just haven't got around to it. Right? Like when you have a 50 mile long cliff that it's too far to get to, like it's too much trouble because we have so much other rock.
It's like, Like, why would you walk 5 miles?
Yeah, that's a next week project, you know?
Yeah.
But that's the thing. It's like Utah is just amazing. I love Red Rocks.
Yeah.
Well, because the thing you run into is they're just between Red Rocks and Mount Charleston, you've got so much great climbing.
Yeah.
It's super accessible. It's beautiful. And unless you're getting on kind of like one of the moderate trade routes, it's never that busy. Like we did Cat in the Hat one day, so we had to wait in line.
Yeah.
And it was funny because
a
it
little
was
bit,
it was
yeah.
French Canadians, because we're from Canada. It was French Canadian line in front of us.
Yeah.
There are a lot of Canadians there, actually. That was funny.
Like half the climbers camp was Canadian license plates.
Canadians, yeah. We that was my first 100-footer at Shakespeare's Wall. Is that what it was? In Red Rocks. That was cool because, like I said, I had this irrational fear of heights before. It was the first time that I'm climbing it, and our friends got a photo of this, which was awesome because it's so easy there. And you can hardly see me. I'm like a speck, right?
Yeah.
View. But it was just such a beautiful day. It was just a nice breeze, and I was just so focused for the first time, just focused on what was here. Didn't look at the sharp rocks down below, or even try and test my rope, making sure my harness and everything's good. And then we did Cat in the Hat. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. Classic.
Yeah. So I think we only got up to 500 feet.
Yeah, basically we didn't end up doing the last pitch because there was a lineup for it.
There's a lineup, and I was a little scared. I was not comfortable. It took me, I think, a couple of days to get over. I was a really good climbing. Like there was 3 of us. I didn't know a thing that I was doing.
You did. You just don't remember anything.
No. What I mean, no, but I even had my belay device that one time on backwards.
Well, that was for rappelling.
Yeah, well, that's not good. Anyway,
well, it still works.
So I really didn't know I just know how to climb. Like, don't ask me to tie anything. Like, and that was fine. That was not my responsibility. But I realized real quick, and given my thing of heights, I was pretty good. Like I did what I was told to do. We had to backtrack and go. We were kind of like exposed. We had to kind of put our feet in the little thing, and he's just like, and he's all worried if I fall, like I'm gonna go swing. I'm like, oh well, who cares? Just go with the flow. It'll be fun. I'm just telling myself, right? So I think as an experienced climber, it was really just pleasant, like really great to see that there were so many climbs I could do and have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I did have.
Did you do the traverse pitch 4 at all?
Yeah.
Or did you guys? Okay, so you made it there.
Yeah, it was basically just pitch 6 we didn't do.
Okay. Cool.
Because it was just there was like 4 groups ahead of us, and it was other people already rappelling down.
Yeah. So it's just. So how was it like conquering your fear? Was it just like you stayed so focused climbing, or did you have to really sit back?
Well, obviously, when we're at that stage, because that was my first time going from 100-footer to
the next day,
whatever, right? Yeah, next day. And by the way, the next day I think I went to the spa. Like I don't normally do that.
She ditched us and went to the spa.
Like, fuck this! Like I need to take a break. And Ryan was nervous too, but he's just quiet. I'm not. I'm a little bit more. But you know what? I don't lose my shit. When we're in those circumstances, I want him to be as comfortable and focused on keeping us safe and keeping our rope management. Whatever you tell me to do, I'll do it.
Because the thing is, I'm leading it. I'm the only one with anything to worry about. And that's what I always say. It's like if I'm out climbing with people,
what I'm worried about, if something happens to you, we don't know what the fuck we're doing.
Well, Ryan did.
He is search and rescue, so that's good. We have that on our side. he does. But I think that it came down to I learned on the spot that when it calls for being calm, I was calm. I wasn't comfortable. We've climbed 800 feet in Adirondacks. It was just flat. And I was like Frankenstein doing that, right? Because I was so, and I didn't want to touch that, or I don't know what I said. I think that took me about a day and a half to get over because I was so much.
Yeah, but then
and there's a free soloist coming up right beside us at the hardest part, and I'm just like,
Yeah, because there's people, like it's a 5-6 slab, like down in the Adirondacks.
Yeah.
And so it was a case where like people do laps of it.
Yeah.
Running shoes.
Yeah.
Like, and he was in like the Sunday best shirt and a hat. Like,
yeah, he had like a short sleeve button up shirt,
like
he wasn't even like had a little fanny pack on.
Yeah.
Just a crusher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that made me nervous. And but I decided about a month and a half later, let's go back and do it again. And it was good.
It was easy.
It was easier. I was more relaxed. So I've learned a lot about how you conquer your fear. You just the more you can just focus on the wall. I know that everything's safe, right? Like that's obviously very important. But listening, like if I'm scared, and I told him, I'm like, I'm done. Like, just be kind and polite. I'm done. Whatever we can do to go. Like, I want to go down. Like, and he respects that. He'll push me a little bit, but not too much. Because he knows that, because
I need somebody to climb with next weekend, so.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, because obviously with you right now climbing down in Zion, you were saying like you're looking to do moonlight, but you got to find a partner.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, the trick is because if you're going to free climb it, it's a moderately hard climb, and somebody's got to be able to climb like 512 crack climbs.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where for that, how would you go about vetting somebody?
That is a lot more harder. Whenever I'm pushing myself to like the limit of my climbing, because I probably would try to like free climb it. It just takes it to a whole different level because you want a climbing partner that's fast, that's knows how to like climb hard, is skilled. So that's, in my opinion, that's one of the hardest things in climbing. And that's kind of why I built Climb Life, is to hopefully help create that dot, like to create that final plug. It's not just for a beginner, it'll eventually be for advanced climbers too. Because right now we're more primarily for beginners, but eventually I want to make it where you know who the advanced climber is and you can just get it like that day, that they're ready. So yeah, the reason why I actually made Climb Life was because I was doing trade shows. Every week I would be in a different town, different city. And that was the hardest part, was trying to find a good partner. Like you can read a guidebook, but it's not going to belay you. It's very easy to get lost on a route. Obviously, like, your friend, not your friend, but the booty you found, the gear, 20 feet to the right, that person would have been safe. 20, even like a 5-foot difference on a route would lead you to a potential deadly fall. So that's why I think like guides and people that know the area are extremely good. So right now I have a huge contact of friends that climb. So I'm basically today shooting out all my text messages to my friends to see who can take me out climbing. And I have their experience level, like pretty much like written down or memorized. So I know which friends is capable of belaying me on Moonlight Buttress and who will be able to pull up there with me. Because someone could be really good at climbing, but if they're going to have to like aid or Jumar the whole thing, it won't be as fun. So I want to get someone who's also going to attempt to like free climb the whole thing with me when I do Moonlight. So certain climbs just have a very small margin of who can actually climb with you. I wish I could call up Alex Honnold and be like, hey, let's do it. But he'll be like, no ropes. And I'll be like, it's a very, very small margin.
If I'm not mistaken, like that was one of his first big free solos. Yeah. And like that, to me, that's insane, right? Because obviously the rock it's good rock, but it's still sandstone, so shit does break off, Yosemite granite. But the fact that like he cruised it, his big issue was trying to find his way down. You know, he's got all these stories about getting stuck up at the top and like not knowing the route down.
Yeah.
You know, like the getting up part was easy for him, you know, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's insane.
So you said that you free solo as well?
I do a little bit. Not Honnold level, but what I was gonna say to you, like when you saw the soloist, I hate watching people free solo. I don't like to do it. I don't like to see it. But when I actually do it, it's like I don't mind it. You know?
Well, because you're in control of your own actions.
Yeah. Yeah. But I don't like to do it in front of people either. It's just kind of like courtesy, you know?
Yeah. I just said he offered us to go. I'm like, no.
No, you go.
Well, you need to go. Like, and I came, but I'm a little bit probably more sensitive than most people because, like, I remember in California there was this like little viewing platform, and these kids were standing on the railing, and it was super windy. And he was like doing the whole Titanic thing because it was windy, holding himself against the wind. But if the wind wasn't there, he was going to fall like 300, 400 feet, you know. And I was like, and I was safe on the ground on the, you know, and I'm just hanging on, like, it just really extreme anxiety. So, yeah, I just can't, like, I had trouble walking on a glass floor of like a big CN tower like that.
Yeah.
Is like hard. Even though there's insurance and there's
it's engineered.
It's engineered. So it's really irrational. So I think for me, the way I got into it, if you know, for people who are listening, is, you know, bouldering, right? And even doing that at my age, I'm 46. So, you know, you have injuries, you worry about falling and twisting an ankle, your knee, whatever, right? And now I'm at the point after 3 years, and it's just funny how there's almost like this tolerance for fear that just diminishes. And it doesn't matter if it's been like 8 months since you've climbed. I went back to the gym, did something, and I was actually more fearless. You know, it's almost like I grew. And
because you've been climbing outside?
Not at all. No, maybe just that pause. I went back, and maybe because I forgot what it was like to approach it. But I try and approach climbs now childlike. I pretend I'm a kid at a playground.
Yeah.
I'm excited to be here, and it could scare the shit out of me, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to hit your face if you're bouldering, because we boulder a lot.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's usually the thing. And yeah. I mean, I like to test my rope, but even this year we were in Quebec and we were climbing outdoors. And I refused to test my harness, my rope, like hanging in it. Right. I'm like, I'm not doing that. I need to get over this. Right. Like,
yeah.
If you're going to do that, do it close to the ground. But nonetheless, like we're very militaristic about our, you know, safety protocols. Like nobody climbs until the other person yells, okay, lay on, you know, okay, I'm climbing, right? Like it's so strict, but it makes me feel better.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. Even on short cliffs, you always knot the end of your rope.
Irregardless, yeah.
You know, like there's just these things. If you just get into the habits, you reduce the risk dramatically. You know, even sport climbing, like don't be such a purist. Like use a stick clip and clip the first bolt. You know, like it's not worth broken ankles.
Yeah.
No.
So obviously, you know, when we chatted a little while ago, because we were going to record this a few weeks ago, but you were working on a book. So even though it's not out yet, this is going to give you just to finish it. Tell everybody what the book's about.
It's just a really good, like, how to get into climbing. It's a very basic, it's called How to Get Into Climbing, No BS. Meaning this is very short, very simple. It's probably about like 20 to 30 pages. I just got to finish finalizing the page margins. And basically it kind of tells you what gear you should get, what you should know before you start climbing outside, how to get into climbing. So I add in links So it'd be like, here's the harness I buy. And then you use the QR code. You don't have to buy it, but at least you got like a picture.
Mhm.
And then I say like, these are the basic knots you need to learn, the figure 8. And then there's a YouTube link right below it where you can click on it and you can see someone tying a figure 8. So you can learn. And then it has like people who you should follow in climbing, like Alex Honnold, these people, really focusing on like how to get the most out of your climbing to also help you save a lot of money. So like the book will be like, you can get this, a lot of beginners get this, but then you're spending like $50 more for a product that's a lot more worse, you know? So yeah, it's just basically teaching them what to buy, what to know before they climb, and the different types of climbing with a bunch of YouTube videos, instructionals, and who I recommend. So kind of a lot of my knowledge put into them. So instead of like the read should take them less than an hour, but then the video might be like 2 hours, 2 to 4 hours. But within that 5 hours, they don't need to spend like 20 hours searching for other things. You know, you don't need to spend like 3 hours looking for a harness. The only thing that you'll probably have to really look for is your shoes, because climbing shoes, you have to try them on, and really no shoe fits the same, but just kind of like a basic beginner shoe. I really tell people buy used on these shoes, you know, because the worst thing you can do, and it probably happens to about 30% of people whenever they try a new sport, they buy a bunch of stuff and within 6 months they never use it once and they have to sell it, and you just lost like
It's like you buy it, you get into it, and then you're rebuying it in a couple. Yeah, because we'll basically, once you've got the book out, you'll let us know. We'll put the link in the show notes.
Yeah.
And you know, obviously, we'll put a link to the article I wrote on how to get started climbing. And
you've got some great YouTube videos.
Yeah.
Of going on adventures and some climbs.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, because that's actually how Joe and I met. Is he hired me to do some writing for him.
Right.
You know, and then it was like, he's like, you have a podcast. It's like, yeah, I do. You know, so here we are.
Yeah.
So for the climbers who are listening, the more experienced climbers, what's your favorite harness?
I like the big wall harness. I think I use the big wall Metolius harness.
Oh, okay.
So I really like the dual loops. I like the thicker pads. I don't really like the sport climbing harnesses, which is like kind of what they push onto the newer climbers. And my personal opinion is like the weight from the big wall harness to the sport climbing harness isn't really anything, in my opinion, and it's just 10 times more comfortable. So
that's like giant padded.
The what?
Like
Yeah.
Really well padded.
Yeah. What do you prefer?
Right now I'm running the Petzl Jama. It's kind of their trad, you know, bigger gear loops.
Okay.
And I really like the solution guide from Black Diamond.
Okay.
You know, it's kind of like where they made the solution toughened it up a little bit, and then put bigger gear loops on it.
Okay.
Because Black Diamond's gear loops aren't big enough, but I love their gear loops.
Okay. How come?
Well, I find like with any of the U shape rather than, because with the Black Diamonds, they're like almost rectangular shape.
Yeah.
You have a flat section. Whereas I find any that have kind of more of the hammock looking or the droop, everything just all pools in the middle.
Yeah.
Right. And so I find it's much easier to organize your nuts and cams and grab what you need when it's not all sliding into each other.
Yeah, I can see what you mean.
Yeah, because that's what I run into with the Ajama. Like, the gear loops are big, but everything slides forward.
So it's very okay.
So then trying to get the right, you know, nut or cam, it's like you're sort of fighting with all your stuff, especially if you got enough on there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that's my now.
And I like ones that are not expired, like not 20 years old.
She's just giving me shit because I thought I gave her one of my I gave her my old harness, but I gave her my old harness.
Okay.
Orange. So I gave her my old Petzl Guru, which was 20 years old.
Yeah, we were at a gym. The guy's like, "This is expired.
You can't use this harness."
Like, he's like having the same reaction I do when people like are on risk of hurting themselves. So he's like, "Please just take this one and
here's a borrow a yen rental." So it's one of those things. Like they were both orange. I got confused. So favorite climbing shoes?
I wear about 3 different shoes. So it really just depends on the type of wall, type of climbing.
Shoes, like crag climbing, trad shoes.
Crack, I would say TC Pro, for sure. I met Alex Honnold once, and I was talking to him about finger cracks, and he's like, "Just get the TC Pros. They're like the best thing for Yosemite." And to be honest, they are legit.
Yeah.
And the other shoe I wear is the 510 Anasagis, like the gray ones. That's kind of like my everyday comfort shoes. And then I use Evolve Oracles for like very hard sport climbing, kind of overhanging stuff. So, but I'm constantly trying on different shoes and trying on different things just because I like to like variety the stuff up. So, yeah.
So now basically Catherine will be super happy because we've kept this to about an hour because I tend to be super long-winded. So we're keeping to a schedule, making it, somewhat punctual nowadays. So Joe, thank you very much. If people want to follow you, where can they find you?
They could follow us on Instagram, OG Climb Life.
What's your YouTube channel as well?
So what, YouTube? Just Climb Life. So, and it's a dragonfly. So, I like dragonflies. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So for anybody, if they want to, once you can travel, everybody, if you want to hook up with people in different areas to climb with, go on Climb Life. It's a really cool idea of connecting climbers with climbers.
Or even just in your own backyard.
Yeah. Help people find partners, right? Like it in a sense, you can be kind of like the climbing Uber and Tinder.
I was just going to say that.
Now you have to start like a dating section to it too. That's where the money is.
Yeah. Session.
The climbing dating site, because climbers aren't social. Well, they're social people, but only with other climbers. Because like every weekend, what are you going to do? You're going to go climb. If you want to have a romance life, you better find another climber.
That's true.
Yeah.
So I found you your $1 million idea right there.
I'm gonna do a pivot 180 and go straight to Climb Tinder.
Well, hey, I would just build it in. It's just another option for you.
All right.
Different levels.
Well, thanks. It was really awesome chatting with you and learning more. So
yeah,
we'll have to swing by and say hi.
Yeah, once we can travel again.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, listen, hopefully you find a partner to do Moonlight. Awesome climb. Yeah, everybody check the show notes on how to connect up with Joe and get into climbing, because COVID, you can't do anything else. Get outside, have fun.
Yeah, feel free to ask me any questions. So if you're a new climber, advanced climber, anything. So cool.
Yeah.
All right.
So until next time, lay dirty.
Bye.
Later. See you guys soon.